Tell me, how do you think divorce affects children?
Well, I think it affects them differently depending on what age they are when they're divorced. As an example, when my parents got divorced, I was 14 and my little brother was 5. And so he never seemed to really show any scars from it. He moved through it very easily, whereas I was at a very impressionable age, and it really, well, I'm still working on it. But so I think it depends on the child's age and their knowledge of the situation.
How do you think divorce affects children?
As a preschool teacher working with younger children between the ages of 3 and 5, I have seen some children that are real resilient because they haven't seen the problems that have happened within the family. So it's not so much of a problem for them to go on with it. The kids that have seen a lot of trauma in their house, a lot of the fighting and arguing, it's almost a relief. They're happy. They can get on with their life. Their development starts picking up. It does affect small preschool children. It does affect them in their developmental skills. They don't grow properly, either cognitively or growth-wise.
What kind of disruption do you see in their development?
Some children will go even to an extent of not talking. They will only talk when they absolutely feel it's necessary to. They will not associate with other children. Their socialization skills are none. Others become very disruptive. Some don't want to go through the courses of learning to use their small or large muscle skills, which is participating in activities, which is part of socialization also. So it does affect them in a lot of ways, and it can slow down their development.
So it isn't true that just because they're small that they'll just bounce right back?
No, you can see it in a lot of different areas. It may not even show up until they reach elementary school level for some parents to recognize, but as a teacher you see where a child's supposed to be at, and knowing what parents are going through, you see the different roles children play. Some, especially little girls, like to be the mothers because the mother and father are absent from the family. The most resilient children I see are when the parents are able to divorce on a friendly level and by keeping a readily scale. But then again, you have the different temper tantrums that they go through. They have their days of going through a change because they're going to dad's house or they're going to mom's house. So it's very noticeable.
Well, thank you very much. Tell me, do you think that divorce affects children?
Definitely. When my parents divorced, I was 12, and it affected me and my relationships afterwards. The fear of abandonment and a lot of other issues came up. But with my daughter, when I broke up with her father, she's pretty resilient. I think the big thing is the relationship my mother had with my father. They were very distant from each other. And with my daughter's father, we have a real close friendship, so she spends a lot of time with both of us together, or with her father, or with me. I think that's made all the difference in the world.
So the fact that the two of you can still negotiate and are both present in her life has helped create some stability for her?
Definitely.
Okay. Do you think when she's older that this divorce will show up in her relationships?
I hope not, because we've tried so hard, even though we can't be together, to have a relationship between us with her. I'm hoping that it won't affect her later on the way the divorce affected me. So.
Well, it sounds like even if it does, she'll be able to talk to you about it.
I hope so.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome back. Did either one of you have any thoughts as you were hearing from my students?
Well, particularly about the very young children. I was thinking about how very young children need stability and they need constancy. They're learning about time and they're learning to count on their parents. And they like things repeated over and over. You know how the 3-year-old will watch the same movie
Absolutely.
20 times. And when suddenly their life is turned upside down, is changed, they lose perhaps the environment that they've lived in. If they've had to move, they lose that pattern of a parent arriving at a certain time and being there for them for certain things. And so they immediately will have to become confused and then regress to an earlier stage to try to put themselves back together again. And that's why we see, even in preschools, we see the signs that these children are going through divorce as a trauma for them as well as their parents.
And so you're perhaps one example might be a child who is potty trained, begins to have accidents again,
Right.
begins to ask to wear a diaper. That sort of thing is maybe a sign that...
And of course, the young child reflects so much of his parents' feelings because he's not, you know, a 2-year-old doesn't have the verbal skills or the cognitive skills to discuss with his parents
That's
what's
right.
going on. They feel it. And so they act out what they feel. And they act on their parents' feelings. And if mom or dad is edgy or grouchy, how does that child know how come? It must be him.
You must, yeah, because children are so, and rightly so, so narcissistic. I mean,
So
that's their
self-centered.
job. They're very self-centered.
That's
They
right.
are the universe.
That's right.
So anything that affects you obviously has to be related to me.
That's right.
So what did you see, Cecilia?
I don't have many comments about this since most of it was about the therapist side of it. But I do want to say that it is really a shame that most people think that the younger the child is, the easier the divorce will be on them. Where I have had children that I've been the attorney for who have been 2 or 3 years old where there was drug use and violence in the household, and those children were so terribly affected.
Okay.
It was really traumatic.
Okay, so they really are taking in what's going on around them.
Yes.
Let's take a look at a graphic I have prepared about some things parents can avoid as they're going through
Okay.
divorce with their children. Don't use your children to carry your angry messages to your ex-spouse.
Oh, yes.
Don't worry your children with grown-up stuff such as legal or financial problems. Don't expect your children to give you emotional support. That's a role for friends, support group members, and/or therapists. Okay.
That last is so important because we tend to forget that we lean on our children. We just take it for granted that we can hang on to them and dump on them. But it's certainly not healthy for them to have to become the focus of our needs.
Okay.
It's their needs that we're supposed to be responsible for.
Okay, so we may inadvertently begin to have them want to take care of us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we don't mean to.
That's
but
right.
We do.
I did want to say something as far as the legal problems, and that is, you know, some parents want to tell their children about what's going on between them and their spouse so that the children will say the right thing or whatever.
Okay.
In Santa Clara County, we have a very firm policy that children are not allowed in the courtroom, which means children will not be put on the stand as a witness, and they will not witness what is going on in their parents' divorce.
Okay.
We do have family court services, which is a separate entity upstairs in the courtroom or the courthouse, and it is staffed with therapists who do mediating between the parents and evaluating and assessment. And what they do is if the child is over 5 years old, they will talk to the child and ask the child about what's going on in the family to get a better feel for the family dynamics. But that is the largest extent the children are asked to participate in this matter.
But no matter how often we ask parents not to discuss the legal aspects of their situation with their children, and not to discuss the financial, and not to discuss their unpleasant feelings about each other, no derogatory remarks about each other, we hear the children mouth what we know to be the parents'
sure.
feelings. And even in Kids Connection, we see children draw pictures of that court. And they haven't been there, so they have to get it somewhere.
That's exactly right. So saying things like, yes, Mommy would like to buy you that new bike if Daddy would only pay his child support on time is probably a very harmful thing to say. Okay, what can we do to help our children through this process?
Well, I think that one of the things that we can do is, you mentioned at the end of one of these last sort of sets of rules, is that we need to find a support group where we can lean on other people instead of our children when we're in this.
Okay.
One thing that we tell the kids in Kids Connection is that parents have to listen to their children. They have to be receptive. Somehow they have to put aside their problems and all of their worries and focus on the child and listen to what that child is really saying.
But the biggest, most important thing of all that we can give our children is the knowledge that it's perfectly okay to love both parents,
Oh,
both mom
absolutely.
and dad. A divorce doesn't mean the child divorces his parents.
That's right, and I'm sure there are many children who feel like they need to choose.
Oh, they do, and they should never be asked to choose.
Okay.
Never.
And part of this is going to include the role of the extended family as well.
Oh,
I mean, it isn't just parents. I mean, we have grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins, and trying to find a way to keep the child connected with their own support system as much as possible. I mean, if a child's very close to their grandparents and then to pull them away from them as part of our anger against our spouse, I think needs to be something that we're aware of is not in our child's best interest.
That's very true. Because an adult acts in a way that violates another adult's standards,
Right.
and we do this a lot of times. I mean, there's certainly parents who cheat on each other or parents who do things which build enough animosity in the relationship that they can't live together. But that doesn't mean that a child should lose his favorite grandma or his best cousin or his uncle. These are important people to that child.
Absolutely, and they need a support system just as much as we do.
That's right.
I want to thank you both for being with us tonight. I appreciate your time. Over the next 2 weeks, we will have a two-part series, Women in Community and Men in Community. We will learn about these two special movements and the gender needs of all of us. I'm Mary Crocker Cook. Good night.